doesn't show us.
Yeah, so I don't know what's going on here. I wanted to say something before we're only 7 minutes into it, thank goodness. But
you want to start over?
I don't know what to do.
Hey, give me a sec. We're live now.
Yeah,
there we are.
Yeah.
Are we live now? Hey, man, it's the first day of preseason.
We're live now. We've had some technical difficulties, but we are.
There we are. We're live. Hey, we're live here too, so we're good. All good. All good.
Yeah. We started the show a couple minutes ago and then realized something was going on. We're live, so that's a hell of a way to jump into a show.
I was really good for 6.5 minutes.
You were, man. You were. Hey, you may have just saw. You guys probably missed out on the deep cut of one of the best Bark After Dark. Not Bark After Dark, Georgia Show episodes there's ever been. So this just feels like Bark After Dark right now because it's off the rails. Hey, I'm Jake Rose, Rusty Mansell, Palmer Times. We're here to talk about the start of Georgia preseason camp. The Bulldogs had their first practice today. We're going to get into that. We'll get into a little bit of talk about Georgia and the NFL draft here at the end of the show because that was something that we definitely wanted to get to and discuss. But first day of practice, Rusty, and you wanted to be on because you wanted to. You said you had some things you wanted to ask, so I'm gonna let you get to it.
I'm asking damn questions tonight, so I'm with these guys in the comments. I'm asking questions. You guys were there. Let me start with you, Jake, and you've been doing this for a while. If you could talk to the Georgia fans tonight, you've seen 15 minutes of practice. You've seen these things over the years through Kirby, kind of a trained eye. What was that like? Oh boy. Georgia fans are going to love this. What was that for you today?
It was Nate Frazier. It was watching Nate Frazier move around, man, because I tell you what, I try my best not to like build any prospect up, and be that way about a guy. But, man, when I watched him move, I watched Trevor Etienne go through, and I was like, man, that cat is quick. And then a couple of guys went, and then Nate Frazier went, and I was like, man, he is that cat moves at a different speed. Like he is. He had the feet, and Rusty, it took me, like, I watched him for 10 seconds, and then I think I went and told Palmer and Seth Emerson and just go on down the line. I was like, hey, just go watch number 3, the running backs, just for a second and tell me what you think. And I know Palmer for sure was like, yeah, I see it.
Yeah, it was Jake was like, hey, stop. Don't worry about taking pictures for a sec. I just want you to watch this. And I was like, what am I watching? He goes, you'll know. I was like, what's different? Like, is this dude, is he a dude? And sure enough, he sure was. You looked at his feet going through that drill. I know there's a lot of buzz out there about him around, this beat right now. He looked really good today. And I think that's something that Georgia's going to need because, I think overall great news for the running backs today with Frazier looking really good, Branson being back out there. But I think that Georgia's going to need those running backs, especially a third, a fourth option. You can't just have Trevor Etienne and Roderick Robinson. The emergence of Nate Frazier is going to be so big. And I think that we could be watching a really special freshman season from him.
Before I give you that question to you, Palmer, Jake, I want you to answer this question for me. You see him, you see Etienne, you see these guys. Would you agree with me that Georgia's had a good running back room the last couple of years, but they have lacked that explosive player, that James Cook type, somebody that scares you to where if you miss a tackle in space, it's going to cost you 6, it's going to cost you 50 yards. You look at these guys, and Dwight Phillips Jr., you know what I'm saying? That's another guy who might be the fastest player in America right now. If Aaron Smith's not. So, Jake, what do you say to that and what that room could look like as the season goes on?
Yeah, I tell you, Rusty, it's one of those things, man, where it's not one of those. I feel like teams can kind of safely play Georgia in certain situations against the run because of what you're talking about. Like the run game's been really good. And Kendall Milton went on a tear at the end of last season, and Dejan Edwards did a lot of cool stuff. And Kenny McIntosh had one of the best, over 1,300 total yards in the 2022 season. But yeah, I would agree with that. And I think it's caused teams to be able to play Georgia a little differently in the run game and maybe where play action hasn't really allowed Georgia to get on top of defenses the way that they'll be able to get on top of defenses when there's a big play running back threat.
Those running backs you love. You know how Bobo loves a screen game. You start talking about guys like that and how he used Keith Marshall, how he used Todd Gurley, how he used Sony Michel and those guys in that screen game. But you got to have guys that can run out in space. And it sounds like, if you add that, implement that into the offense, that's going to be another valuable weapon.
Well, and I would imagine that Bobo was probably involved in that screen game stuff with Kenny McIntosh back in 22 as well.
Monken loved it too. Yep.
And so, I think that listening back to what Kirby had to say this spring, he was asked about Trevor and the kind of player that he is. And he said, I'm not sure that we've had somebody like this since DeAndre Swift in the backfield. And so, when you think about the fact that the amount of running backs that they've put into the NFL, they've had 3 drafted over the last 3 drafts, with Zamir and Cook going in 2021 or in the 2022 draft from that 2021 team. And McIntosh in that 7th round in 2023, 2 guys that were very productive, good college backs with Dejan and Kendall. I think that this running back room has the chance to be really special. With Etienne, with Frazier, with Roderick. So you bring a little bit of smash and dash to it. You've got, the big power backs in Roderick Robinson and Branson Robinson, but you've also got a little bit of the speed as well with Nate Frazier, Dwight Phillips, and Trevor Etienne.
Palmer, for you today, what was that thing that you saw that would excite Georgia fans if they got to see the 15 minutes that you saw today, other than, we'll skip Nate Frazier, but what's something you saw that was like, well, the Georgia fans are going to love this?
Michael Williams with the outside linebackers. I have been skeptical. I've been hesitant to buy in on that. And I know all the reporting has been, he's going to play outside linebacker. He's going to play outside. Well, this spring when we talked to him, it was, hey, who's your position coach? I'm still Trey Scott. This spring when we were watching him, he was working with the defensive linemen, or I would say working with the outside linebacker some, but primarily with the defensive linemen. When we came in today, and who knows what it was like after we left, but when we came in today, he was coming away from outside linebacker drills, coming back and working with those guys, Damon Wilson, Chaz Chambliss, Michael Williams. That was your grouping at outside linebacker. And I think that that's something that is certainly going to be welcome news because of the potential that he has to be a game wrecker at that position. You really need Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins healthy, and I think that maybe that's why we saw Michael at defensive end in the spring as opposed to outside linebacker because they just didn't have the bodies there. But, I think that if you get TID healthy, if Gabe Harris is able to live up to the expectations, if Joseph Jonah-Ajonye is somebody that is a capable contributor as a third option, that really allows Michael to play that outside linebacker role and be a game wrecker.
Yeah, I'm not worried so much about that outside linebacker room. My good friend Randy McMichael, former Georgia Bulldog, 10-year, 11-year NFL vet, heard him talking about Michael Williams today, and he said, listen, Michael Williams can do all he wants at Georgia. When he goes to NFL, he's going to play defensive end. He's going to have his hand in the ground, and he's going to be in front of a defensive lineman. I do think Georgia's using his flexibility and ability to rush the passer. That's something he wants to learn, and I get that, and that's going to be the best for Georgia. That's going to be best for him this year. But I think long-term, Jake, you might agree with me that Michael Williams is going to be a defensive end. He's going to have his hand in the ground. He's going to weigh 275 pounds, and he's going to be matched up against a franchise left tackle, and he's going to get paid a hell of a lot of money to rush the passer in the NFL from that position. But I do think there's a lot of flexibility.
He's probably going to be lobbying every Sunday to rush for, hey, coach, just let me rush from a 2-point stance a couple times a night. Yeah,
but
that's what he's going to be doing.
Here's one thing I will say is that Georgia's defensive end bumps inside to a defensive tackle in those rush situations. Yeah. I think that Michael in the NFL will really have opportunities to be a rush defensive end.
He's not going to play inside the tackle much at the end, and that's a big deal. I think that's going to be and I'm not trying to get too technical with this, but that is where everything kind of comes down. Is it's not necessarily that Michael's going to be an outside linebacker. He's just his days of playing inside the tackle, are not offensive tackle is what I'm saying. The inside of that guy are going to be very limited going forward. Especially on early guys. Yeah. I think you'll probably rush from inside on third down some just to get him some mismatches with guards and stunt games and stuff like that. but I think that his days of lining up inside the tackle are probably pretty much over.
I'll tell you, I mentioned it the other night on the Ask Rusky chat. I've made a note of this a couple of times. I'm telling you right now, this NFL scouts love Jalen Walker. They love Jalen Walker, man, because his versatility. He has shown he can rush from the edge. Georgia has primarily used him off the edge. I do think you're going to see more reps of him at true inside backer. So that's going to make him even more of a commodity there. And I'm telling you, man, I don't know how high he's going to go. I think he's going to have a big-time year for Georgia this year. And I'm telling you now, don't let this come out of nowhere in 6 months. He could end up being a very high NFL draft pick because of what he can do and never leave the field because he can play on third down.
How many sacks y'all think Georgia as a team can get this year? Because that was something that I dove into last night. I put it in a goals piece that I wrote this morning, 5 goals for Georgia in 2024. And improved pass rush was one of those goals. Last year, not so great. I want to say they had 30 sacks in 14 games. They had 35 the year before, 49 in 2021. To me, with an expanded playoff and the potential to play more games, I think the target's got to be 40. And you know, knowing that you've got Jalen Walker as a guy that can really rush the passer, Mykel Williams in that role that they are going to try to utilize him more, 40 is my target number for them.
Jake, I mean, you might agree, might not agree.
It's a lot.
That's a lot because Georgia's only done it. Georgia's only done that
one time under Kirby.
One time under Kirby Smart.
And granted, they would have gotten it in 2020 with a regular season.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Did Georgia lead getting off the field on third down?
They did. Yeah. They did. 100%.
That's where I think people look at numbers a little differently. And I think the philosophy of Georgia is, yes, they want to create that havoc. You've heard them use that term. They want to create that pressure, but Georgia wants to get off the damn field. You know what I mean? So
they're also really good when they rush to pass on third down. They affect the quarterback a lot in those instances. And I would be willing to bet that Georgia probably does as good a job as anybody. They're up there with the top teams in the country in third down sacks and third down pressure rate. But it's those early downs where you're trying to get that special player that can convert from run to, you know, to kind of run to pass on the fly like that and make plays for you. You're still looking for that guy because in the past they really haven't really had him. If teams went play action and, you know, the running back stayed in the pass pro, Roquan Smith would kind of pick his hole and, you know, go get it, and it would be somebody different every time. And they really haven't had that go-to guy other than Azeez Ojulari there in that season, who, I mean, kind of beefed his numbers up late with 3 sacks in one game.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think you want that true edge guy that, you know, you got 3 sacks, get this ball off, or you're going to be looking at looking at the lights. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? There's a lot of people that want that. But I think Georgia has manufactured some pressure. I just watched a half of the Ohio State game yesterday, and they did a lot of pressure early with Smile Munden. And I was looking at what they did with Smile Munden. Remember the first series, he got a sack on Stroud. There was kind of a delayed blitz there. So just looking at different things they did against a player like that, as I look down the line and see some of these talented quarterbacks, some of those things they're going to do maybe. I think we all agree that Georgia's going to play Alabama differently schematically on defense. Michigan saw that footprint and said, we're not doing that. We're going to come after Jalen Milroe. And that was the benefit of them seeing Georgia, how they played him. And Georgia now gets a second shot at Jalen Milroe in Tuscaloosa at the end of September. So we'll see how they do that time. I think everybody that has the personnel has copied how Georgia has played Tennessee. You know, can you match up one-on-one like Georgia has, get physical with Tennessee wide receivers, throw off that timing, and they've had back-to-back games where they have given Tennessee offense fits. Not everybody can match up personnel-wise, so there's all kind of different ways. But I think Georgia has been really good at creating, manufacturing stuff. I'm very excited about Damon Wilson to see him. You know, Jake has mentioned him for a while. We have heard he's in the 250 range. He has held his weight all summer. And I'm telling you, if Damon Wilson is 250 at the end of August, it's going to be hell. It's going to be hell to deal with him. I'm telling you, as the year goes on, he's a very talented football player. just the weight was an issue for him, but he's getting up there. I think he plays a 250, man. Excited for him.
Yeah, I think anything north of 240 is going to be pretty strong for him. I mean, because he was talking about wanting to get up to like 245 pounds. Before that, I think he's gotten it up even north of 250 at some point. So, I mean, that's the kind of guy that can be that difference maker, without a doubt. Anything else you want to know from practice?
Yeah. Oh, give me your vibe, man. You see Kirby Smart there in person. Jake, you've seen him a million times. Palmer, you've seen him a bunch. Each of you give me a minute. Kind of what's your vibe was Kirby Smart today? Kind of what you think he was trying to say, what he said today. Jake, I'll let you go first.
I don't know if I got a whole minute for you. I can just say that he was in mid-season form. I mean, he was yelling at we talked about Nate Frazier a while ago. He was yelling at Nate Frazier, telling him, what did he say? Why are you walking? I thought you told me you wanted to be first team on first punt team. On the first string punt team. He was yelling at some guys at one point and said, "Man, you guys are already tired. This is unbelievable."
I mean, just kind of
he was getting after some things.
I think he told Ryan Puglisi to go back to Avon Old Farms.
I tell you what, man, think about this, and you all both know this. The football gods didn't shine on Georgia players anything today because it has been 79, it's been 82 degrees, it's been raining, it's been cool, and football practice starts today, and it's freaking 94, and guess what? Tomorrow it's going to be even hotter. And I heard Kirby Smart say, yeah, man, we want to build some adversity through that. So, those guys are thinking, oh, my goodness. This is a totally different world because they don't do two-a-days anymore, basically. But I guarantee you, man, he was pushing them through some heat today, and he'll do it this weekend for sure.
Yeah,
get a little engagement going right here. Our man Andy Kicklighter, he's got a trivia question for us. Whoever wants to participate,
I do want to see this trivia question.
Yeah, hit us up with that trivia question, Andy, and we'll give it a shot. Palmer, what was your impression?
For me, he's looking for leadership on this team, and I think that given the circumstances of the last few weeks, that's understandable. I think that he's looking to a lot of these veteran guys. He understands that this is a team that's got a chip on their shoulder, and so he's looking at all these different guys. He's telling those older guys to lead, and understands that there's going to be some youth on this team. There's going to be some youth that sees the field, but you've got a lot of guys that return, and so. I think that he's just looking for leaders. And, Oscar Delp was somebody that he mentioned. Arian Smith is somebody that we spoke with today. Kirby has mentioned time and time and time again. He's somebody that they're looking to. Dominic Lovett, Carson Beck, of course. Defensively, you obviously have Malachi Starks, Michael Williams, who we talk about, Jalen Walker, Smile Munden. They've got a lot of guys that I think that they can look to as leaders. Tate Ratledge, another guy, right there in those trenches.
That's the one you hear the most about, Tate Ratledge and Michael kind of and more Brinson, I think, are three guys that I kind of hear that are pretty vocal in the locker room.
And I think that they all go about it in different ways too.
Oh yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
I know.
To me, it was the looking for leadership that stood out the most.
Mm-hmm. All right, so before we saw practice today, Kirby talked to us. Biggest takeaway from there, obviously, bar none, is the dismissal of Ra Thomas. Knew that was coming. It's unfortunate. It sucks. Sucks for everybody involved. But especially, everything that's happened with this, with Ra since he's gotten to Georgia and everything, just kind of played a big role in why this turned out to be the way it did. I think is what needs to be said right there. It's not the first time and all that stuff, and we never really get into that stuff on here, but it's a pretty easy decision for Kirby Smart. And so we moved from there to taking a look at what was the injury report basically. Kirby kind of always feels good to start off preseason camp and spring drills because he will just flat out just list it out there for you. He'll give you one good rollout. And I think the biggest thing to come from that was Branson Robinson. Rusty, I'm telling you, like we were months ago, if you'd asked me back in, I don't know, March,
me too.
I'd have been everything I was hearing was like, man, Hopefully we'll get him back in before November.
Yes.
And now he's practicing. They're not going to limit him, but they are going to hold him back. Like, they're not going to limit what he can do. They're going to limit how much he can do, coming back from an injury like that. But for him to be basically contact cleared and everything to start preseason camp feels like nothing short of a miracle.
Do you think we see him against Clemson?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I was the first, and Jake was the same. We were very consistent in this is a 12-month recovery on an injury, and then you start finding out how your body reacts for that next 13th and 14th month. Well, it was 10 and a half months, and we started hearing this guy's running, this guy's lifting, this guy's doing a lot in the summer. So we were like, Jake and I both were like, wait a minute, this is a lot had more than what we thought. And you look at him, and for Kirby to come out and say this guy's all but good to go today, that's a huge deal, man. And hell yes, based off what I've heard, and yeah, I mean, you get Branson Robinson back for that Clemson game. That is a big deal. We don't know. Did he say anything about ETN today? Did anybody ask about what ETN play against Clemson?
No, and I don't expect him. I mean, that was sort of asked at SEC Media Days, and he didn't specify on who would be suspended when. And I don't expect that we're going to get an answer on that.
No. Well, I mean, you know how he thinks. Your game planning, and Clemson is going to have to spend that much more time preparing if that guy's in the game because the offensive package he brings. So I get that, and we'll get that answer, down the line. But if Branson Robinson can go this Clemson game, that's a freaking big deal for Georgia.
Andy Kicklighter's got our trivia question: who in the playoff era, so the last decade, which Power 5 team has not made the playoffs but has the most wins? And he says, if you've seen it already, don't blurt it out. Somebody's put something in the comments.
I like that answer a lot.
I like that answer a lot too. I'm not sure who it is.
Yeah. I don't know.
I keep thinking of teams, and then I'm like, oh wait, no, they made it that one year. Yeah. Oregon was the first one that I thought of, but they made it the first year.
I don't know, man. That's a good one. I like the name Andy Kicklighter, just to be honest with you, man. Kick-ass name, I like it. Kick-ass name.
What a name.
I like it.
Another thing that got me today in the press conference was Kirby talking about Ja Jackson. We got a chance to see him today. I've never really seen a person like that on a football field before, out there wearing number 64. I'm telling you, man, this dude looks like he could look over an 8-foot chain link fence.
I told you.
Like he looks so big from across the field. But I thought it was funny that, and you kind of knew it, but to hear Kirby Smart verbalize it, made me think of it a little differently. He said, basically, listen, this kid's got a lot of ability. We like his size. We like his, athleticism. We're just, we're hoping he's tough enough. Basically said we're hoping he's tough enough to kind of handle it.
Yep.
And I'm like, how much does Kirby Smart have to like a kid's athleticism and size to be able to maybe he's tough enough? I don't know. It's just one of those things. Like that's reasons why they recruit a kid sometimes. And in this situation, they're just saying, well, hey, we like this, what we see enough that we're gonna cast our lot and find out.
Well, the risk reward there is a no brainer because there's only 3 or 4 humans that look like him.
No doubt.
That can actually get into a stance who actually want there. So you look at the risk reward on somebody like that this late in the process. And in the early returns, man, I know our guy Jeremy Johnson went to see him work out. The trainer he works with in Atlanta is a guy that doesn't sugarcoat things. I mean, is he raw? Yeah, he's raw. But this guy wants to play football, period. And Evan Grimes chimes in, Kirby loves the size in the trenches. I would be willing to bet Georgia's the biggest team in the country. They're going to be the biggest team in the country. There's another major decision tomorrow in Juan Gadsden. And Juan Gadsden, 6'7.5", 350, 360 pounds, tackle at Westlake High School. If they were to add him to their 2025 class, you're going to keep getting bigger. But when you look at the offensive line room at Georgia, for what it was in 2014, 2015, 2016, it is this the biggest change in Georgia football, period, is the offensive line room, period. It's the biggest one.
Well, and I mean, they emphasized that in that opening press conference.
Yeah.
That's the first thing
Mm-hmm.
he said.
Mm-hmm.
Palmer was around then. Palmer was Palmer. How old were you, Palmer? 12 years old.
I was a junior in high school.
Oh,
okay.
Man.
First Georgia game I attended was that year, the Vanderbilt game.
So
we don't need to go down that road, I guess.
My guy Seth Emerson, who's very smart. We love Seth over at the Athletic. Seth and several of those guys went to the Alabama SEC championship game that night, just trying to grab Kirby Smart after the game. Everybody was expecting Kirby Smart to be named the head coach at Georgia probably the next 48 hours. My man Seth saw Kirby back out the back door and he was gone into a state patrol car, and they never got to talk to him that night. But there was a lot of Georgia beat writers that went to that Alabama SEC championship that game waiting. And then the next, I guess, 36 hours later, 48 hours later, maybe the next day, Jake, if I'm wrong, I think the next day they named him the head coach. And I think he was with Ben Cleveland, was his first in-home visit that Monday night or whenever it was, that Monday night. Down there in Steve went to Stevens County to see Ben Cleveland. That was his very first visit to go see a player for Georgia. I remember seeing a picture of Glenn Schumann tweeted on the road, and I was like, "Who is this guy? What?"
Yeah, on the airplane with Mel Tucker. Him and Mel Tucker on the airplane together.
I was like, "Who is this young buck? This 26-year-old dude that I never even heard of it. He's going to be on the field."
He was at the time. He was the youngest. He was the youngest assistant coach in the SEC. By a sizable margin. I want to say, Rusty, I'm not sure if he was 26 yet. I think he might have. He was going to turn 20. He was going to turn 26 like that spring, like that April or May or something like that.
Yeah.
25 years.
So I went up
to
see
March 29th birthday. So
I went to see
he is 34 right now.
I went to see Ben Cleveland up in Stevens County when he was at the end of his 8th grade year, and Andy here has a story, but Ben got locked out after school one day, and he had a shotgun and a grill in their barn, and he shot a couple squirrels and grilled them up until his parents got home. And he was like, "I'm hungry after school. I'm gonna have something to eat." So his dad Derek told me the story. They came home that evening, and Ben had killed 2 squirrels in the yard. He had grilled them up on the old grill. So when he got the name Big Country, he got the name Big Country.
Yeah, there ain't no doubt about it. Big Country up in Baltimore. Ain't that something?
Got a big old, I know it shocks you, got a big old jacked up truck. And all I think about is there's no way he's parking out in a parking deck anywhere in Baltimore.
No, you got to park out in the open in that thing. Yeah. Palmer, any pulls from the press conference for you today? Anything that stood out to you?
Yeah, I can't help but think about the defensive line, with the news that Warren Brinson's dealing with a little bit of an injury. Doesn't sound like it's too. I mean, Kirby described it as nagging, but I also, hear what he said about Mykel Williams and the fact that and this was at SEC Media Days, but the fact that he did not have a full fall camp last year, and that it's so hard to, when you don't have a full fall camp and you just jump right into the season, that it's so hard to put together a really good campaign. The fact that Warren Brinson and Jordan Hall are both banged up right now, so my eyes went to the defensive line today. And, I thought Kristen Miller looked good, and getting him back out of, avoiding the transfer portal, looking so much bigger now, knowing that you've got 2 interior guys banged up. Xavier McLeod looks the part. Obviously he's somebody that doesn't have a ton of experience, but is at least in his 2nd year at the collegiate level. So, he's somebody that you would look to. I think that they've got a couple of guys in that freshman class. And, Kirby said, look, we are bringing in 6 guys that are above 300 pounds, and they need depth on that interior, and that includes the transfer in McLeod. But he said, we need, his quote was, "I want to say 4 or 5 new guys that are first year with us, and that includes a transfer portal, and 4 high school guys that are 300 pounds or greater and haven't played a snap for us. They will provide our depth in that room, that when guys get injured at that position, they've got to be able to step up and play." So that is a huge emphasis for this fall camp, and something that I would watch is, that defensive line room, and how do they respond to no Jordan Hall this fall camp and a limited, or at least a limited Jordan Hall in fall camp and a limited Warren Brinson. There's going to be opportunities for those guys to develop, and they need it whether those guys are going to be on the field against Clemson or not.
Yep. Got to have depth. Got to have interior
and
depth.
One thing Georgia loves to do, man, they love to do it. And it doesn't matter if they start with the Sisters of the Poor or if they start with Arkansas or whatever. Even Clemson a couple years ago, even though, that was a different situation, they love to get defense. Like, guys come out of preseason camp a lot of times, defensive linemen, like earning some trust from Georgia coaches. So I think there's a very good chance you're going to see Xavier McLeod and maybe a Jordan Thomas or a Nasir Johnson. I feel like at this point you're definitely going to see Joseph Jonah Ajonye in the game in kind of some crunch time snaps, even if it's just for a couple, because Georgia's just got this. They've got this thing where early on in the season they'll play a few defensive linemen to kind of see what they've got almost, and then that rotation kind of tightens up as the year goes on.
One more thing for me is just listening to Kirby talk about, being asked, are you going to handle camp any differently, considering the fact that you've got, the potential for more games. And Jake, I saw you tweeted it out. Camp is camp. And they're not going to adjust the way that they go about camp because of the potential to play more
groundbreaking
games.
Stuff right there.
Camp is camp. I mean,
camp is camp.
The plan is there is no plan along those same lines. Camp is camp. The season, they may adjust things in the season when they, start to get a feel for how much longer they're going to be playing football. If you clinch a spot in the SEC championship game, how do you, go about, knowing that that's a winner gets into the playoffs and most likely the loser's in as well. If you clinch a spot, maybe you're, resting some guys against UMass or Georgia Tech in a way that you might not have done in the past when you kind of needed that perfect record. But they're not adjusting the way that they go about camp. It's going to be physical. They're going to practice hard, and they're not going to shy away from that, because that's what builds them into the team that they are. Game 1, game 5, game 8, on down the line.
Kirby Smart spoke at the Atlanta Touchdown Club last week. He does that every year, the end of the summer touchdown club deal. And someone I know was there. And the question, I think, from what I understand, was brought to him, like, what would you do different as a coach? And he basically said, I don't know that I would do it different. He goes, but I think the first year I pushed them too hard, like 2016, because he wanted to change the mentality of how physical. He goes, I almost killed those kids. And for some grace of God, we went 8-5, but it laid the foundation for the rest of the year. And it laid the foundation for 2017. It laid the foundation for Lorenzo Carter, Roquan, Nick Chubb, Sony, and all those guys that come back and say, Coach, if that's how it's got to be done, then that's how we're coming back to get it done. So I think he's going to learn this year as well with extended games. Correct me if I'm wrong. Does it say you'd have to win? Would you have to? Okay, so if you don't lose a game, just say you don't lose a game, would Georgia go 16-0? Is that how?
16. Yeah, because so you would play 12 regular season, a 13th in the SEC championship. You would have a bye and then 3 playoff games.
Okay, so if you were into the first, you could potentially play 17 games.
Correct.
So that's a totally different deal. I think
that's an NFL schedule right there.
It is an NFL schedule, and everybody's going to have to learn how they're going to handle that. So they can say what they want, but what are they going to do in December? And what's the makeup of this team when you look at a team for the first time ever as a head coach and say, guys, we need 4 more. We got to have 4 more in a 5-week span or 6-week span. So all these practice stuff, it's going to be very fascinating. It's going to be very interesting. I'll tell you this, guys, as I was doing my season prediction that was put out earlier today on DawgsHQ, I was I know I should know better, but I was shocked at the amount of good games around the country, man. And I start looking at Texas's schedule. And then I clicked on Michigan and found out that Texas and Michigan's playing week 2. Up there, and you start thinking about Nebraska and Colorado and Texas A&M and Notre Dame opening the season. I'm telling you, man, we have had in the last 2 or 3 years, we've had some snooze fest weekends. Not just Georgia, like nationally, you might have like one game. dude, those days are over. Those days are flat out over, man. There is some games every weekend for college football, and it starts the very first weekend. But that really got me going last night, looking at these schedules for every week and what's about to happen, because nobody on this earth has went through a college football season with the amount of games we're about to deal with, and then all the new conference movements. Texas, Oklahoma come to SEC. So it's going to be crazy, man, how those things go.
No doubt about it, man. We're on our way now. Practice has started, and we're on our way, and that's what's important. We'll be back with you on the Georgia Show on Sunday night. I do know that.
They practicing what's the schedule? Give me the schedule for the rest of the week.
They go tomorrow, they go Saturday, and they go Sunday for sure. I don't know really anything past that. I think they have to give them a day off in their first 6, if I'm not mistaken, like a day off in their first 6 days of camp. So they'll probably get a day off maybe Tuesday or Wednesday.
And Sunday's the collective practice.
Sunday is a collective practice. So
Sunday's the,
how do you think it's going to be there? 3,000-4,000 maybe? 2,000-3,000?
I don't know, man. I'm interested to see. I am really interested to see, because I mean, you'll have a large chunk of members that, you know, may contribute from farther away, and they get a better practice later on. You know, like they get to go to a scrimmage. They'll get to go to a scrimmage or something down the road. So there'll be some of those defections, but I don't know, man. I definitely, I was thinking somewhere in the 2,500 range, you know, 2,000 to 2,500.
Yeah.
But either way,
I would encourage you, man. If you're a member of the City Collective and you pay that, I would go if you can logistically. I mean,
yeah, you're not going to get to go to many. You're not going to get to go to many.
That's a rare deal, especially in a fall camp, padded
practice. Yeah.
Padded practice, man. I would go to that. And you want to see the real Georgia football pace. You want to see Kirby Smart. You want to see those guys kind of what they call, you say, unplugged. You're going to see a real college football practice and kind of what separates Georgia. I heard Randy McMichael, again, we're talking about it today, the 1s and 3s on one end of the field and the 2s and 4s on the other. And it's as fast as pace as you can go. And the 4s are getting as many reps as the 1s. So it'll be interesting how that thing goes.
Yeah, really. I'm really interested to hear and to hear what we hear out of that. I know some folks are probably going to, you know, want to tell us what's going on. If you go and you want to tell us what's going on, shoot us an email or something. We'd appreciate it. But yeah, we're going to be around on Sunday night, maybe to talk a little bit about that practice and definitely to talk about kind of what we're hearing out of preseason camp and that type of thing. And I think, you know, here soon we're going to be, you know, really ramping it up with our full season schedule with what shows we're doing and on what days. That's going to be coming up here toward the end of August. So we're excited to be back. We're excited to be back looking at some football, and we'll be back with you on Sunday night. Y'all take it easy.